effort to disprove that she's an unlikable bully brat who did not deserve any of the negative press she received, Blake Lively acts like an unlikable bully brat who cannot believe any of that negative press could possibly be genuine. It was you. It was all you who made me unable to stand you.
Could this be the turning point in Blake Lively's war of lawsuits? For months, she's been chasing what she called her smoking gun, the piece of evidence that would finally silence critics and destroy Justin Baldoni in court. But now that so-called proof, it doesn't exist. And without it, could her entire case collapse? Could this even backfire and put her in legal jeopardy? Stay tuned, because what just unfolded is more shocking than anyone expected. But first, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on the biggest Hollywood legal battles. Blake Lively's legal team just suffered a crushing blow that could change everything. The high-profile actress has been hunting for months to get her hands on what she believed would be the smoking gun evidence against Justin Baldoni and his crisis management expert, Jed Wallace. She wanted those signal messages. She demanded access to every digital communication that could prove her allegations of a coordinated smear campaign. But here's the shocking twist that nobody anticipated. Those messages don't exist anymore. Jed Wallace revealed in court that his signal communications automatically delete after being read. Every single message that Blake Lively's team was banking on as their key evidence has vanished into the digital void. Think about the implications here. Lively's entire legal strategy hinged on obtaining these communications to prove her claims. Now her smoking gun has turned into smoke itself, but the legal maneuvering gets even more dramatic. The judge initially dismissed Jed Wallace from the case entirely. Then Lively's team fought to bring him back in, arguing his involvement was central to their conspiracy claims. The court agreed that Wallace must provide his client list and communications up to February 2025.
Ongoing apparent feud between her and Taylor Swift, and what I think is going to happen when coverage of their rift increases when Taylor Swift likely has songs coming out about Blake Lively and the friendship ending. Okay, as we know, Blake Lively and Taylor Swift, by all accounts, are no longer friends, and Taylor is releasing this album that talks about this song ruin the friendship and more. By the way, I will say this, I'm not a Swiftie, just so you guys know, but I try to cover things as fairly as possible, and strongly seem to reference Blake. We know that there's been the extortion attempt and more. Now, what's really interesting is that this PR article came out. And I don't think that anyone's discussed this particular aspect of this PR article, which not only talks about the fact that Blake supposedly removed Taylor from her guest list, which, let's be real.
However, Lively wanted access to everything through today's date. The judge said no, cutting off her fishing expedition at February. This judicial limitation suggests the court recognizes when discovery requests become excessive and punitive, rather than genuinely seeking relevant evidence. Now here's where the intimidation campaign becomes crystal clear. Lively's team has been systematically targeting media personalities who dared to criticize her publicly. Megyn Kelly, Perez Hilton, Candace Owens, and numerous content creators have all found themselves dragged into this legal nightmare through subpoenas. The subpoenas weren't identical. Some targets faced demands for email communications, text messages, and private correspondence. Others, like certain content creators, only had their Google and YouTube accounts targeted, but the message was unmistakable. Criticize Blake Lively, and you'll face legal consequences.
Hacking Blake Lively and claiming that she was issued a subpoena by Blake's team. Blake Lively's team has now come out to say that's not true. They never issued Megyn Kelly a subpoena, nor did they issue her company one. In a video where Megyn says that Blake Lively is a bully, a brat, a narcissist, an elitist, etc., she goes on to say that she was now able to let us know she was issued a subpoena by Blake Lively's team. However, that's not true. In the video, Megyn claims that Blake's team was going after her and her team for confidential and proprietary materials that they used for any and all stories about Blake Lively.
The Megyn Kelly situation exposes the deception at the heart of the strategy. When Kelly was subpoenaed, headlines immediately exploded across entertainment media. Kelly fired back with characteristic force, calling Lively a narcissistic bully brat, in scathing public statements that dominated news cycles for days. But then something peculiar happened that reveals just how calculated this entire operation really is. Lively's team quickly issued a statement claiming they never subpoenaed Kelly at all. They're playing dangerous word games here. While they didn't serve Kelly directly at her home address,
Blake's team, however, came out with a statement saying at no point in this litigation did Miss Lively serve a subpoena on Megyn Kelly. The only subpoena they issued that has any connection to Megyn Kelly is this company, Red Seat Ventures. Now, Red Seat Ventures did work with Megyn Kelly at one point, but they don't any longer. They were obtained by Fox Corporation back in February, and as you know, Megyn Kelly no longer works with Fox. Red Seat Ventures represents a ton of big names, Dr. Phil, Bill O'Reilly, as well as Megyn Kelly, but they also represent media outlets like the New York Post.
They subpoenaed her production company, demanding all communications specifically related to Kelly's show and commentary about Lively. The technical distinction is meaningless in practical terms. Kelly's company was forced to hire lawyers, review communications, and prepare responses. Kelly herself was named specifically in the subpoena demands. The financial and emotional burden was identical whether the papers were served to her personally or to her business entity. Why the public denials? Why the elaborate word games? This looks like panic-driven damage control. Lively's team realized that going after a prominent media figure like Megyn Kelly was generating exactly the kind of negative attention they were supposedly trying to prevent.
Blake Lively is suing Justin Baldoni and his team for an alleged PR smear campaign and retaliation, so it only makes sense that they would issue a subpoena to the Red Seat Ventures, who represents people like Megyn Kelly. Megyn, who's obviously feeling left out because she didn't receive a subpoena, tried to say that she was being targeted by Blake Lively and issued one. When she was called out about this is the statement she responded with.
They needed to create plausible deniability without actually withdrawing the subpoena. Kelly saw right through this manipulation and responded with devastating effect. Her statement called out Lively for obfuscating to try to avoid embarrassment for her own inappropriate behavior. She detailed exactly what the subpoena demanded and how it specifically named her and her show. The timeline reveals the fundamental flaw in Lively's conspiracy theory. Most of these media personalities never said anything about Blake Lively until after she filed her initial lawsuit against Baldoni. The criticism only intensified after Baldoni filed his countersuit with documentary evidence that contradicted Lively's claims. How can you claim a preemptive smear campaign when the criticism started as a reaction to your own legal actions? The sequence of events completely undermines the conspiracy allegation.
Typical Blake Lively, once again trying to avoid embarrassment for her own inappropriate behavior. She subpoenaed the company, not her company, the company. The company that until recently employed me and my show staff, so admits she doesn't work with them any longer, asking for documents, communications, contracts, etc. This is typical in litigation. This is what Blake Lively would want from Red Seat Ventures.
But there's an even deeper strategic problem emerging. Every withdrawn subpoena signals weakness. When targets like Megyn Kelly fight back aggressively, Lively's team retreats. This creates a pattern where only the most vulnerable targets, those without resources or platforms to fight back, remain subject to legal pressure. That's not seeking truth or justice. That's selective intimidation based on the target's ability to resist. Let's rewind. This all began with Blake Lively's lawsuit against actor Justin Baldoni, accusing him of orchestrating an online smear campaign. Baldoni countersued, presenting receipts of his own and flipping the narrative on Blake. From there, her legal strategy grew aggressive, issuing subpoenas to journalists, content creators, and even influencers who had commented on the feud. Names like Candace Owens, Perez Hilton, and Megyn Kelly all surfaced. But here's the twist. Most of these figures hadn't said a word about Blake until after the lawsuit was filed, which raises the question, was this really a smear campaign or fallout from Blake's own decision to drag it all into court? Here's where it gets even more dramatic. Blake's team believed PR strategist Jed Wallace held the key, private signal messages that could expose Baldoni and others conspiring against her. But Wallace had an answer. Those messages don't exist. Why? Because his team used disappearing chats. Once read, they vanished forever. No screenshots, no backups, nothing. In simple terms, the gun Blake thought she had, it's empty. Instead, the court only granted her access to a list of Wallace's clients, stars who turned to him in their own PR crises, which means Blake may soon hold a list of powerful names who never wanted their secrets exposed. And that makes her look less like a victim and more like a liability. Imagine the backlash when those celebrities realized their private dealings were dragged into court, not because of their own actions, but because Blake insisted on pursuing evidence that was never there to begin with. This doesn't just weaken her legal standing, it risks isolating her in Hollywood. Because in this industry, reputation is currency. And if your peers see you as reckless enough to expose them for your own gain, you don't just lose a case, you lose allies. This is bigger than Blake versus Justin. It's a case study in how celebrities use the courts not just for justice, but as weapons. By subpoenaing journalists and creators, Blake has blurred the line between protecting reputation and punishing free speech. If she succeeds, it sends a chilling message. Speak against a star, and you could face legal threats, mounting fees, and endless stress. But if she fails, the backlash could be devastating, painting her as the aggressor who abused the system. And let's not ignore the personal cracks starting to show. Fans noticed that Ryan Reynolds broke tradition by skipping a birthday tribute to Blake this year. Small detail? Maybe. Or maybe it's a sign that the relentless legal war is straining even her closest relationships. Add to that rumors of inflated social media followers, bots padding her numbers while her team accuses others of the same tactic, and the narrative starts to shift. Instead of Blake as the wronged star, she begins to look like the orchestrator of her own downfall. So what comes next? Without that missing smoking gun, her legal path forward looks uncertain. Judges don't reward fishing expeditions, juries don't buy empty allegations, and the public, they're already turning, questioning whether Blake is the victim she claims to be, or the architect of a failed PR war. So here it is. The smoking gun Blake Lively promised the world. It doesn't exist, and without it, her case is standing on shaky ground, surrounded by contradictions and collapsing credibility. Could this unravel everything she's been fighting for? Could her attempt to silence her critics end up exposing her instead? One thing is certain. If this case continues, it won't just reveal the truth about Blake and Justin. It could blow the lid off how Hollywood stars really use power, money, and lawsuits to control the narrative. But what do you think? Is Blake the victim of a smear campaign? Or has she overplayed her hand and triggered her own downfall? Drop your take in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter in this unfolding Hollywood legal war.